up, guys? Welcome back to Zilla MMA. I am your host, as always, the Zilla. I want to start this episode as I always do, and that's by thanking you, the viewers. Really appreciate you taking the time watching this video. Please go like and subscribe so we can keep putting out content. Hope you're liking the picks. Hope you're enjoying my analysis. Really appreciate all you guys. Leave some comments too. I'd love to interact with the viewers that I get, so leave some comments. Give me your picks. Give me your favorite fights for this week. We'll go ahead and start jumping into this card, though. We've got Dariush and Tsarukyan main event on this card in Austin, Texas. I'm actually going to be attending this one live, so this will be my only video this week. I'm going to be flying out, leaving from Atlanta, going into Austin on Friday. And so, obviously, not really going to have time to put out any other videos. I'll give some bets and my prize picks at the end of this video. Sometimes I make a separate video for those. I'll just toss them in the end of this one. But we'll go ahead and get into this. Start breaking it down. Definitely some fights I like on this card. And one that I liked a lot earlier in this week, but the line's gotten juiced up pretty hard. I'd jump on it as soon as you can if you haven't already. It's this first fight between Jamie Lynn Horth and Veronica Hardy. Moving for a good reason, in my opinion. Started around -110 each way at the beginning of this week. Horth now all the way up to -180 the last I looked. I think Horth is better pretty much everywhere in this fight. On top of that, I think she's going to be a lot bigger. She has a height and reach advantage. And I saw the interview that Veronica Hardy had this week on Ariel Helwani's show, where she just kind of had this weird vibe where she didn't want to say that she could compete with UFC fighters, didn't really show any confidence in herself. It's something that's really concerning for me to see from a fighter that doesn't really seem fully into it, that doesn't seem to fully believe in themselves. So that's kind of concerning for me. I was really expecting this line to open closer to like -200 for Horth. It seems like it's working that way, maybe beyond that now. So I'm going to take Horth in this spot. Definitely one I'll probably be betting. And I'm going to have her in this fight by decision. Moving on to the next one, we have Wellington Turman versus Jared Gooden. Turman at -195, and I was honestly expecting it to be a bigger favorite here. Gooden, a fighter who he can catch you, I guess, but he fights with his hands down. He's very hittable. I like the striking style of Turman. I think he'll be able to take advantage of that. He kind of reminds me of Alex Pereira, just the way he walks forward and uses his leg kick to open up the striking. Obviously not at the level of Alex Pereira, not even close, but the styles are very similar to me. I also don't really trust the gas tank of Gooden. I think there's a clear path to victory for Turman if he decides to use his grappling and control Gooden throughout this fight. The path for Gooden pretty much is just catching Turman with a shot. He does have that unorthodox striking style, fighting with his hands down, where sometimes fighters can be caught off guard and eat a shot. But I just don't really see that happening. I think Turman's going to control him. Gooden, kind of surprised to really see him still here in the UFC. I'm going to take Turman by decision. Next, we have Ihor Potieria versus Rodolfo Bellato. Bellato coming in here at -425. And I think it's right just because of how good of a matchup this is for him. I don't know that he's -425. He's not that significantly better than Potieria, but the matchup is just really good for him here, in my opinion. First off, I'm just not that high on Ihor, to be honest with you. I haven't seen a ton I like out of him. He's going to work for a takedown. He's shown he's very vulnerable to striking in the clinch and grappling exchanges in the process of getting there, and that really seems to be where Bellato thrives. I mean, he's a very well-rounded fighter. He lands big shots while in the clinch. I really don't see much of a place where Ihor's better here. I anticipate the Bellato will stuff the takedown attempts, land some big strikes, and I think he's probably going to get the finish here inside the distance. So my pick here is going to be Bellato by TKO. Next, we have Steve Garcia versus Melquizael Costa. Costa coming in here at minus 240, which I think is a tad rich for me, but I still think he's probably going to be the right side here. I think Garcia's probably looked a little better than he actually is by just getting a huge reach advantage in his last fight, which plays into his style, and then getting Chase Hooper, who at the time striking was obviously a little questionable. He knew he could outstrike him, wasn't afraid to get in there with him. He didn't have either of those advantages in this fight, and I think it could result in him getting exposed a bit. Costa some really nice striking, good kicks, does a good job of going to work on the body. So I do think Garcia may have some opportunities to land on Costa, but I just see Costa getting the better of these exchanges and probably getting the finish here inside the distance. So my pick for this one, Costa by TKO. Moving on to our next fight, Joe Solecki versus Drakkar Klose. Klose, currently a slight favorite here at minus 125. And I actually see this fight kind of similar as that Potieria-Bellato fight we just talked about, just with obviously higher level fighters. Solecki going to be working hard for the takedowns and to get the back of Klose, but to do so, he's going to have to engage in the clinch, and it's a dangerous place to be with Klose, if we're being honest. I think Solecki could get some control time, potentially even steal a round, but I ultimately see Klose catching him with something. Klose's career, obviously, not where he wants it to be right now, being in this fight. Could be very different if he'd finished Dariush back in 2020 like he nearly did. Roles could be reversed here. So I think he's a very underrated fighter. I think he's going to be able to land on Solecki, and I think he's going to get the win here. I'm going to take Klose by TKO. Next, we've got Cody Brundage versus Zach Reese. Reese coming in at a minus 225 favorite. And he did get a quick armbar in his Dana White Contender Series fight, but it was a bit of a sloppy performance, if we're being honest. He threw some kicks and is obviously very dangerous on the ground, but I do have some concerns after watching that with his striking defense. That being said, I'm going to take any opportunity I get at this point to fade Cody Brundage. I think he should be on a 4-fight losing streak and out of the UFC, but was given a gift in his last fight, just eating a shot to the back of his head and being allowed to win via quitting in that fight. It's something I don't like seeing. I rarely back those kind of fighters. And on top of that, I just don't really find him overly impressive anywhere, and I don't trust his gas tank. So I'm going to take Reese in this fight. I'm going to take him here by TKO. Next, we have Miesha Tate versus Julia Avila. Avila's favorite here at minus 155. And honestly, I was a bit surprised to see Tate as the dog in this fight. There's obviously some issues with both of these fighters. I understand why people don't want to back either of them for different reasons with the age of Tate and 2.5-year layoff for Avila. It makes this one kind of tough to predict. Tate definitely had issues in her last fight with Lauren Murphy, but dealing with that size and strength of Murphy, I kind of understand that. When she's trying to grapple, it makes that kind of a tough matchup for her. She could have another matchup here if she stands at range with Avila, where she's going to struggle if she lets her throw. Avila obviously looked very polished with her combinations in her last fight, but again, that's over 2 years ago, so we don't know that she's going to come in and look like that same fighter. This is a really tough one to predict, and honestly, I don't recommend anyone putting much money on this one. But if you're going to, I think you're better off taking the dog. I'm going to take Tate to close the distance, hold Avila up against the cage, and probably steal a couple rounds with her control. So I'll take Tate by decision in this fight. Next, we have Punahele Soriano versus Dustin Stoltzfus. Soriano is the favorite here at minus 300. Couple different viewpoints on Stoltzfus that I've been seeing so far this week. One side still views him as that guy that beat Joe Pyfer on Contender Series. Promising fighter who's had a tough go of it in the UFC, but his results aren't reflective of who he is as a fighter. Other side, very staunch in the other position. Just say he doesn't belong in the UFC. 1-4 since he's gotten there. Got knocked out within the first minute against Abus Magomedov. I think they have a good argument as well. I think it probably lands somewhere in between the two. If he can grapple with you, he can actually be pretty effective, and people are quick to forget he can kind of eat a shot. Just because he, got knocked out with a front kick in his last fight, I think a lot of people are forgetting he is somewhat durable. But the problem I see here is that he's fighting a guy in Soriano who has shown very solid takedown defense and is probably at his best with his striking when that distance is closed. He loves throwing those short hooks and has a ton of power. He's the type of fighter who struggles with a volume striker, but that's not what he's going to be facing here. So I don't think it will be a first round finish like everyone's anticipating, but I do think Soriano eventually lands that big shot and finishes this. So I'm going to take Soriano here by TKO. Next, we have Clay Guida versus Joaquim Silva. Silva coming in at minus 325. And this is certainly the best competition Guida's had to face in a few years. And I have a feeling this is probably just going to be a little too much for him. I mean, he deserves all the credit in the world, all the fights he's had in the UFC, still going at this age. But the power of Silva here is really what's going to be the difference, in my opinion. Guida always has a shot. Silva overextends himself a lot of the time when he smells blood in the water. May give Guida an opportunity to do some damage of his own, get a takedown, do something with it. But unfortunately, I just don't see that happening. I see Silva probably catching Guida fairly early in this fight. So I'm going to take Silva here by TKO. Next, we've got Sean Brady versus Kelvin Gastelum. Brady, the slight favorite here at minus 120, and I've been going back and forth on this fight all week. And in fact, the rest of these fights, I've had some issues picking. Initially backing Sean Brady. I haven't liked what I've seen from Kelvin in the last couple of years, and I don't really trust him in a matchup against a wrestler. And this was an easy pick for me until I saw how Kelvin was looking this week. If you've seen the photos come out of him, he's looking really good at 170. He looks ready to fight at this weight class. And it made me sit back and think about the type of monsters he's been fighting at 185 and how well he's handled himself in those fights against guys who are so much bigger than him in a weight class everyone kind of knows he never really belonged in. This is a big if, but if Kelvin can make this weight, I know he's worked hard for it. I know he's coming into this fight motivated. And he could be a real force at 170. He could really resurge his career here. The question is, will he be able to stuff the takedowns? And if he can do that, I think he's going to be dominant on the feet in this fight. Close call here. I understand why some people are going to be on the other side, but I'm going to take Gastelum to stuff the takedowns late, dominate on the feet in rounds 2 and 3, and I'm going to take Gastelum here by decision. Next, we've got Rob Font versus Davison Figueiredo. Rob Font will be the favorite here at minus 145. Another really tough one to predict. And I think there's a good argument to be made for both these guys. So we'll start with Figgy. Outside of his fights with Moreno, he's just been dominant at 125. He's an all-around very skilled mixed martial artist. Very fast, lots of power, good takedowns. Certainly has a path to victory in this fight. Looking at Font on the other side, going to be much bigger, obviously. Going to have a significant reach advantage. Loves fighting behind that jab. Probably going to be able to touch Figueiredo a little bit. So, obviously, that's going to be concerning if you're someone backing Figgy. And both these fighters are going to come in here wanting to win. Both on the back end of their careers. Both of them being, 35 and up in this weight class. You're running out of time. And so both of them are going to come in here eager to win. Really tough one to pick. I'm going to take Figgy at this point. I think a lot of people were counting him out because of this move up to 135, but he's still going to have the power advantage if you're asking me. I think he can effectively use his wrestling, and I think he's going to be able to control Font throughout the fight. I think if he can dictate where this fight takes place, if he doesn't let Font stay at a distance, he can dictate how this fight takes place. And so for those reasons, I'm going to take Figgy by decision in this fight. Next, we've got the co-main event. Originally Dan Hooker versus Bobby Green. Now Jalen Turner stepping in late. Turner the favorite here at minus 210. If this was on a full camp, it's a no-brainer for me. I really think that Jalen Turner is clearly the better fighter and could really piece up Bobby Green at a distance with the way Bobby Green fights with his hands down. Turner's got fantastic speed. I don't think this would be a close fight. The obvious big concern here is going to be the weight cut for Turner, just stepping in so late. He's big. He already struggles to make weight at this weight class and already has some issues in his recent fights with his gas tank a little bit. I certainly think Turner is the better fighter, and for this show, I'm going to pick him. But this is one you just got to keep your eye on for the rest of the week. And you've got to keep an eye on his weight cut, and you have to see how he looks on the scale. If it's sketchy looking at the end of this week, Bobby Green might be worth the dog play. But for this show, I'm going to assume everything goes well, and I'm going to take Turner by TKO. And finally, we come to our main event. Beneil Dariush versus Arman Tsarukyan. Tsarukyan all the way up to minus 300 for this matchup. Tough to get to that number, and I know a lot of people are going to use MMA math looking back at both of these fighters' matchups with Gamrot, and they're going to be trying to tape Beneil as a dog, and I understand why you do that, but watching the tape, I just have too many concerns about Dariush for me to get there. He just doesn't deal with power well, and I'm not just judging that off his fight with Oliveira. I know there's going to be a lot of people that are backing Tsarukyan purely because of that. Going back and watching his fight with Draco Close, preparing for his fight this week, I saw how badly he got rocked in that fight. I'd completely forgotten that. And looking back even further, you just see that this is kind of a trend in his career. And on top of that, he's going to have to deal with the world-class takedowns coming from Tsarukyan. Beneil might be able to compete with that in the early rounds, but as this fight goes deeper, I really think Tsarukyan's going to take over. He's going to be dictating where the fight takes place. And there certainly are concerns with Arman, too. I mean, rewatched his fight with Joaquim Silva preparing for his fight this week, and he got rocked in that fight and was in danger of getting finished. The issue being, Dariush doesn't really have the threat of that power in the same way that I feel Tsarukyan does. I don't think he's going to be able to take advantage of that. And I really think this could be fairly even through rounds 1 and 2, but eventually I see Tsarukyan, using those takedowns, getting on top, getting some control time, using his ground to pound, and probably eventually putting Beneil out. So I'm going to take Tsarukyan by TKO in this fight. And so that's going to do it for this card. We'll go ahead and look at the few bets I have in at the moment. And we've got 2 parlays. I have Bellato and Turman. That comes out at minus 115. And then Horth and Tsarukyan, which comes to plus 105. Straight bets, I have 3 of them this week. Going to take 2 dogs, 2 guys who I think are really high-caliber fighters and feel good about getting them at dog money. That's Kelvin Gastelum and Figgy. And then a slight favorite in Drakkar Klose. I just think he's the better fighter in the spot. Getting him at minus 130 is good value for me. Jumping over to prize picks as well, I'll give you 3 picks that I'm looking at this week. I like Wellington Turman and Jared Gooden to go over 14.75 fight minutes. I think there's a good chance that fight goes the distance. Same feeling with Gastelum and Brady. I think even if Gastelum's not winning this fight, there's a good chance this fight goes deep. So I'm going to take that over 12.5 minutes. And then thinking that Klose is going to handle Joe Solecki, getting a fantasy score for him at 73.5. I'm going to go over on his fantasy score. So that's going to do it for this card. Like I said, going to be flying into Austin. Probably will put a little content on the channel, but no formal videos. Just going through this weekend. Probably some shorts from inside the arena. And then we'll probably be slightly delayed on my recap video. Probably won't be able to put it together Sunday. So look for that probably Monday evening, I would anticipate, once I get back home. But again, guys, really appreciate you. Please like, subscribe, tell your friends, comment, tell me who you like on this card. And until next time, guys, see ya.